Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Factional Fight Update from Griffith's car. I am on my way home, driving away as I do every day, and I decided to turn on the video and shoot off some ideas that are bouncing around my head. Now, this is the second one of these that I'm releasing this week. This is a special week. So we get a 2-for-1 this week because I just have a ton of stuff going on in my brain right now, and I just want to unload it all. Now, this is all coming out of the new update that was put into the game this Monday, which was a surprise to begin with that it was coming out this early. But, in hindsight, thinking about it, it seems to make sense that it comes out at the beginning of this week, because the team wants to have this entire week to work out all the bugs that they knew were going to be there. It's going to be a long week for these devs. They've been putting in hot fixes day after day. It's like almost like hour after hour. And they're trying to keep track of all the things that are slightly off about the systems. And that just goes to show that it's good planning. Like they were aiming for, I almost bet they were aiming for the beginning of this week so that they would have this entire week. And then the holidays are going to be here, and it will be a nice little break for the devs after this update released, and they deserve it. Man, they've been hard at work. There was like the initial bit where the servers were down for an extended period of time, and they were dealing with complaining customers. And now that this update is released, of course, and they should have expected this, people are complaining. They're complaining. Oh goodness, it's just insane how much people complain about things that they don't like. Part of me, and it happens every single time that a new release happens. There's always people complaining about one thing or another. The devs need to have a thick skin here, because it's very easy to get discouraged by all this complaining. I feel it just, I'm not even developing the game, and I can feel the stress that they must be feeling from this. But they have to understand that the complaining is coming from a place of love for the game. Like, these people are so passionate about the game that when something like this changes the way the game works for them, that is different or changes something for them, they're gonna be people who resist that change. Now, one thing that the complaining seems to be mostly centering around the fishing system, the fishing update, and that holds an extra layer of sensitivity for the devs, particularly because this system was developed originally by Titch. This is Titch's sort of baby. She developed this, she created it, she developed it, she had it all planned out, and then unfortunately passed away before she was able to complete it. And so, of course, the devs decided to take it on, and in memory of Titch, to complete the system and bring it into fruition. And I think they did so on a time frame that might have been a little bit faster than previously expected. I'm not sure, actually, whether or not the fishing update would have come now, regardless of what happened. All I know is that when Buddha took it on, it was like, come hell or high water, we're getting it out this update, and they did, and it's working just fine in my opinion. There's a few things that I would say need looking at and tweaking, and of course that's sort of true for all systems. Every time they come in with a new system, they're always monitoring how people are interacting with it, and to get feedback on what needs to be addressed. And I think that's just a normal cycle of development. So I wanted to just share my experience with the fishing system, and maybe talk a little bit about why I think people are complaining about it. I logged in, I think this was might have been on Monday. I logged in on Monday night to sort of get started with the fishing right after the servers came back up, after I got home. And then I started making some stuff. I just looked into the crafting recipes and typed in, fishing rod. I had nothing because I don't fish at all. My fishing skill going into this was 11, and all of that skill came from when I was a new player, within maybe the first couple months of playing. I haven't fished since. So I made myself a fishing pole, and I was sort of mucking about, trying to figure it out, because things were really complicated. There are tons of different components to go into these things. So like I look up reels, and there's like a massive list of different reels I can make. So I just started making, I made a couple metal reels. In fact, I made a metal reel and I started imping it up, thinking, okay, I'll just imp it up as high as I can go. It's jewel smithing, which I have 70 skill in, so I can imp it up pretty good. I get it to about 40 and it pops rare. I'm like, sweet, I got a rare reel. Only to find out that that metal reel doesn't actually go into a fishing rod or a fishing pole or whatever it's called. So the way that it seems to work is that you have to make a reel, and then you have to attach a handle to that reel. And the handle could be, there's different types of handles for the different types of reels. It's quite like crazy what you have to know going into this. So in order to, I can't even remember the details, but this metal reel makes a particular type of fishing reel. It's like a metal, maybe it's called a deep, I can't remember, reinforced fishing reel or something like this. And that reinforced fishing reel only goes into a deep sea fishing pole, if I'm not mistaken. So like I'm like, I realized this at some point, like I can't get my reel into the rod and it's not working. I'm wondering why it's not working. So I'm like looking it up, asking CA help. I'm asking people. Turns out that that particular reel only goes into a particular kind of rod, and that wasn't the type of rod that I was making. I was just making like a regular light fishing rod. So found out that the only type of reel that goes into a light fishing rod is a light fishing reel. And this is where I started thinking, okay, like red flags sort of went up in my head. I'm like thinking, okay, so that means that sure, I can make this modular component sort of thing, but if I make a light fishing rod, I only have one choice for the type of reel, and then that reel only has one choice for the type of line that can go into it. So I part of me is thinking like, then what is the point of having a modular system if based on the rod that I pick, I'm forced into putting all of there's only one kind of choice. I can't make any. So what I originally thought the system was going to be was that, I could have a light fishing rod, but with a medium reel, and that combination would be different than if I had a light rod with a light reel, right? There might be some kind of benefits and trade-offs and things depending on the combination. So I'm not so sold on the way that it's been implemented in this way, particularly because even though the components are all modular, it almost seems like they're not modular at the same time. Like they could have easily made it so that in order to make this light fishing rod, you needed to attach a light fishing reel and such, but then it didn't need to be this embedded modular system. It could have just been I combined it, and it would have been worked out about the same. Maybe it's something in the works, maybe it's something thought of already, but they wanted to get this modular system sort of like functioning. But as it stands right now, I feel as though it doesn't lend itself to, let's say, making unique type items. Like my fishing rod is going to be the same as everybody else's fishing rod if I choose a light fishing rod. Everybody else's light fishing rod is going to have to be sort of created in the exact same way, with a light reel and a light line. Anyway, that's one thing that I noticed. Nonetheless, making the fishing rod wasn't nearly as complicated as some people are making it sound out to be. Once you get the idea down that if you choose a particular type of rod that you want to make, and then all the components sort of just follow through from there. And it's just like making anything else in Worm. Multi-steps, lots of materials, but once you put it all together, then it's done. And that process seemed pretty good. So I had my fishing rod, I'm ready to set out, and I needed to get some bait, and I needed a float. And I'm not sure if that's optional or not. I think the bait is optional, but the float might not be. I still haven't figured out the details there. But so for a float, I went I'm in it. I was still at the Impalong, so I went off deed there, and there's a ton of birch trees. So I was just going from birch tree to birch tree until I found some bark, and turns out that bark comes off of any overaged birch tree, and that not all overaged birch trees have the bark. It's like they sort of spawn in the same way that forage tiles spawn. It will eventually get a bark, and then if you harvest the bark, then it won't have it anymore, and then the next day you can come back and there'll be another bark there for you to get. Okay, so I might have visited maybe 15 overaged birch trees, and of those 15 I might have gotten three barks. So I'm thinking like 1 in 5 overaged trees had the bark, and I was reading on the forums that they were saying that, you know, initially it's going to take a little bit of while to spawn them, but once they all spawn it should be well populated. So yeah, I felt like 1 in 5 wasn't so bad. Didn't take that long to get the 3 barks, and then I went on to get bait. And so bait, see, I was still at the Impalong, so I didn't have all my stuff in my you know, all my food stuff. So I just sort of went out and looked for grubs and worms. The grubs are found from shriveled trees, and I didn't have an awl on me, so I just whipped together a low quality awl. And you use an awl on a shriveled tree, and you have a chance. There's a chance that it gives you the option to search for grubs. And I was happy to find that when I did search for grubs, I got 2 grubs from a tree. It seemed like, I'm not sure if there's more. Like, it might depend on your forestry skill. It might depend on the awl quality. I have no idea. But I was getting 2 grubs per tree, which is good. And maybe there's a system in place that you can get more grubs if something was better. I'm not sure what it is though, but it's something to learn. Then I went searching for some worms, because you know, I only had found maybe 3 trees that had grubs. So I found a place with some dirt tiles, and it seems like you don't need a tool for finding worms. You just right-click the dirt tile, and it might have a chance of allowing you to look for some worms. I was finding that better luck on dirt tiles that were near water or that were touching water, so that might be some advice to find. Again, I found sort of like a 1 in 5 tiles had a worm on them. So all in all, I had about 6 grubs, 7 worms, I had 3 pieces of bark, and I seemed ready to go. So I loaded up the fishing rod. I went over to a little area that I had found earlier in the week that had a statue of Titch sitting there right next to the water. She's fishing away, so I sat down right next to her and tossed my line in, and I was fishing there. And yeah, so the system itself is nice. Like, it works really well. It's polished in the sense that it's working as intended, and there didn't seem to be that many hiccups. There's a couple of graphical things that I noticed that are probably being looked into. I'll go through them one by one, but for the most part, it seemed to be working. Like, I tossed my line in, you'd have to right-click the ground and say fish. It brings up this little target that you can move around, and that was like pretty smooth. If it was too far away, it would go red, so you couldn't go too far away, and if it was on land, it wouldn't let you go. So like, those types of things were working. I was able to cast in what seemed to be reasonable places in the water, and I would cast my line. It would go in, and the timer would begin. Now, the timer is a 3-minute long timer, and anywhere within that 3 minutes, a fish can come and nibble on the line. Now, when the fish nibbles, you'll get a message in the event window. You will see the float bob up and down, and the line sort of does this like animation. So you have these visual cues where the line sort of like pulls, and you click the left mouse button, and I'm pretty sure you can click almost anywhere. You just click the left mouse button, and it will try to hook the fish. It'll say you hook the fish, or there's a possibility that the fish gets away. If you hook the fish, then there's a series of event window messages. Apparently you don't have to do anything during this time. You just left click to hook, and you just watch what happens. And there's a series of event window messages that I guess are dependent on a couple of things, like what kind of line you have, the quality of that line, your fishing skill and a whole bunch of factors probably play into what happens next, but the fish either tugs really hard and pulls away, or you reel in and the fish is getting tired, and there's like a combination of these things sort of happening. Now, one thing I noticed is that while this event window stuff is happening, you're getting skill ticks in fishing. Like, the skill ticks happen real quick, like maybe once every 5 seconds you get another skill tick, and this process can like last, I don't even know how long it can last. One of the fishes, it seemed like this battle back and forth, like it was getting away and then I was reeling it in, and it was getting tired and then it would get away again and it would reel it in again, and it was like, it might have lasted like a good 2 minutes, and that entire 2 minutes I'm getting these skill ticks. I think by the end of it, that one fish gave me over 1 fishing skill. Like, it was insane. So yeah, it was a lot of fun watching the skill go up and catching the fish and playing around with the system. And I'm in the wrong lane. I gotta move over. Okay, so yeah, I was very engaged with the system and having a lot of fun with it, and I used up all my bait, and then I noticed that I was able to use some of the fish that I caught as bait. So roaches and perch, I think, are useful. You can put them into the bait slot and they become bait fish. So I was using those up and, having a lot of fun. Catching fish, I might have catched a total of 7 fish or something like that in 20 to 30 minutes. And in that time, my skill went from 11 to 17. So now people on the forums seem to be complaining about a bunch of stuff, but one of them seems to be the skill gain. That before you were able to just, queue up a bunch of fishing actions and just go AFK for 15 minutes and come back and you'd have a whole bunch of skill. And while that might be all well and good, I have a feeling that the devs wanted to prevent that sort of gameplay from happening, where you could literally automate the game for 15 minutes, getting skill all the time without touching the game at all. That does seem like kind of a broken system. It was the way it was intended to work in the past, but I know that the direction that the devs are going is to try to eliminate that sort of play and make the game more active. So you have to sort of be participatory in the game in order to get skill, which makes perfect sense to me. There's a reason why fishing seems to be one of those skills that so many people have 100 skill in, because you can play on an alternative tune, or you can even play a different game completely and just queue up a whole bunch of fishing actions and come back, 15 minutes later, queue them up again and just do that all day. So I understand that the fact that people can't do that anymore is making people upset. On the other hand, it's something that I think is part of the design of the game, and I think the game is better for it in the long run. But on the other hand, I really feel like if you are actively fishing, you can gain even more skill than you normally could have before. Like, skill will go faster if you can optimize the process. I wasn't even using a Circle of Cunning fishing rod, and I did turn on my sleep bonus, but I'm sure that I was doing a whole bunch of things very inefficiently during that 20 to 30 minutes, fumbling around with, so for example, one thing that would often happen was that I would accidentally click, right? I would just click the button just because that's sort of like a random thing that I normally do when I'm playing the game, is I'm using the mouse and I click places on the mouse, and that attempts to hook. And if there was no message saying that there's a fish nibbling, then it basically pulls the, you sort of reset. It comes back, you have to recast it out again. So it's like a big waste of time. So I was doing that a lot. Another thing is that you can't move while fishing. So if you're in the middle of fishing and you just, WASD or move around a little bit, that also cancels the fishing action. So I was doing that a couple times. Now, another thing that was happening, and I'm not sure how the devs are going to react to this, or how they're going to adjust it, but and I think that there's many things that are contributing to this, but often the fish would nibble and I would completely miss my opportunity. And this happened for two main reasons. So the fish would nibble and I would miss my opportunity. The first reason is because the timers are just so long. Like, it's a 3-minute timer, and it's anywhere within that 3 minutes. It could be at 1 minute, it could be at 1.5 minutes, it could be at 2 minutes, it could be 2.5 minutes. Like, you're waiting for that event window. So like the first few times, not so much of a problem. Like, I cast out and I'm like staring at the screen for 2 minutes. I get the message, oh, I click, okay, and then I hook the fish. But the problem is that to keep this up, you have to be staring at the screen for like these long timers. It's very easy to just like lose your attention for a moment. Like, you lose your attention for a moment and then you look back and it's like, oh, the nibble happened and you missed it. And now you have to start another action and try again, and that whole time you weren't getting any skill, right? You only get skill after the hook happens. So that was happening. Then the other thing that was happening was I would be staring and I would see the nibble and I would click, but for some reason my reaction time was just not good enough. You know, like, I would click and I would just miss the fish. Even though I was like paying full attention and I saw the nibble happen, I'd click and it's like the fish stops nibbling, and then the next line says you try to pull the hook or whatever the thing is. Like, I just missed it. And this was happening often. Now, but despite these two things from happening, I still got 6 skill in fishing, which is decent. But there's a couple changes that I suggest, I think, that would make this system more engaging and more rewarding. The first one is, I think that 3-minute timer needs to completely change to like a 30-second timer. And the reason is because it's just such a long wait of doing nothing. You know, when I'm playing a video game, I don't want to have to wait 2 full minutes of just staring at the screen waiting for an event message that could happen anywhere within that first couple minutes. Like, that's just it. The first few times wasn't so bad, but after doing it a bunch of times in a row, it was so easy to have to lose my attention, and that I have to rely on being attentive to get that click. After a little bit of time, I was just getting a little bit tired of the waiting. I mean, it's one thing to click a button and then the timer takes 3 minutes, like a meditation, let's say, for example. The timer takes 2 full minutes. But it's not like I have to be attentive for the moment that the event finishes, right? Whereas with this fishing system, it could be a 2-minute timer or a 1.5-minute timer or a 2.5-minute timer, and I have to be attentive that entire time and be waiting for that exact message so that when that message happens, I have to click it. My suggestion is that timer should be much, much shorter, so that the action happens at a quicker pace. So if, let's say, we change that to a 30-second timer, and anywhere within that first 30 seconds, the fish can come and nibble on the line, and then I click and the fight begins. Now, in order to balance things here, I would suggest that you would have to tone down the skill gain severely, because you're going to be engaging with those fish and getting those skill gains far more often now. But if you reduce the skill gain, that would help that process. If the devs are worried about people catching too many fish, I'm not sure if that's a problem right now, because that's another issue right now. I feel like we're getting not that many fish. In the 30 minutes or 20 to 30 minutes I fished, I got 7 fish. 3 of them were bait fish, and the other 4 were all under 0.15 kilograms. So they were all really tiny fish. And maybe that's because my fishing skill sucks and that I was using a light line, whatever it was. Nonetheless, I really don't feel like that is game breaking to, let's say, double the amount of fish that I get. But they can tweak it. You know, they can tweak it somehow to increase or decrease the number of fish that you can get, or make it like more challenging, or whatever it is. But just reducing the time makes it so that you're more active, more engaged with it, and that the rewards are happening at a quicker rate. That'll keep you going, you know, working at that system. I think people are a little bit discouraged right now, and one of the things that I was discouraged with was just to see how long it took before the fish potentially was going to bite, and I had to sit there and stare at the screen waiting for that message for the entire time. Like, I couldn't alt tab to another screen. I couldn't play on another character during this time. I couldn't do anything. I had to literally stare at a screen doing nothing but waiting and waiting and waiting, only to click it once, and then I had to wait and wait and wait. Then I would cast my line, and then I would wait. It's like way too much waiting. So yeah, my suggestion is bring that timer down to about 30 seconds. And then the other thing was the reaction time. So I would click it and I would miss. Even though I felt like I clicked it in time, but I think that the reaction time expected is really short. And I play video games a lot, and I say that my reaction time is pretty decent. Like, it's not horrible. And the fact that I'm missing, I can only imagine there's like a ton of people out there who probably don't have the same kind of reaction time that I do. I have reaction time that's good enough to play first-person shooters at a half-decent skill. Like, I'm not the best at them, but I have a decent reaction time. And I know for a fact there's people out there who play Worm who probably aren't used to that sort of like kind of gameplay where you're like have to be exactly on time. So for that reason, I would suggest just increasing that reaction time. Like, make it so that people are just more successful. Because it's so heartbreaking waiting that entire time only to click and miss it because of reaction time. And then you have to do it all over again, and that whole time you're getting no skill, and the whole time you're getting no resources, and it's like it feels like a waste of time when that's happening. And I know it feels like less of a waste of time when the fish gets caught and you're like excited. And if that can happen at a more frequent rate with more success, I think people would feel more successful with this. The last thing people are complaining a lot about is the breaking of the rods. Now, I don't know what was happening there, but maybe I wasn't having rods breaking on me because the fish I was catching were kind of small. But in some circumstances, some people are finding that their rods are breaking even though they imped the rods up to like 70 quality and they win it. Maybe they're going out on the boat and they are catching big fish. It might be that they're just using the wrong sort of setup for the fish that they're catching. I'm not sure. It might just be a learning curve sort of thing. It might be that they're using a light fishing line and they're catching like these massive fish, and that's just not a good combination. And maybe it's just a matter of us having to learn about it. But it's definitely something that I think the devs should look into to make sure that people aren't running up against these frustrating situations where their lines are breaking and they're catching no fish, and they just spent all this time trying to do this and they're getting nothing out of it, if you know what I mean. And I think that a lot of the complaining is coming from that perspective of, I just put in a whole bunch of work and I'm not seeing the results that I was expecting to see. In fact, they're seeing no results whatsoever. People are saying they're catching no fish. And I was catching some fish, but if I were to gauge how successful I felt, I would probably put it on the low end of success. All the fish I caught were these tiny little fish that wouldn't feed me even in the slightest. So as a new player, new players are going to be struggling with these tiny little catches. And you want to make people feel a little bit more successful. You want them there, I know that the people are complaining about the skill gain, but I really feel like the skill gain is good. It's a good balance right now. But what needs to be balanced, I think, is the engagement during the moment of castings needs to be increased. So I'm not waiting for 2 minutes before doing anything and then waiting another minute before I can do anything else. Yeah, that needs to be changed, I feel. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the fishing system. I haven't really delved too much into anything else. I know that people are getting all excited about the chicken coops. Chicken coops are something that people are working on. What else is there? There's the priest update that people are working with. I haven't really done anything on my priest yet, so I haven't even looked at that. And then there's the new the Havens Landing place. I think I kind of want to make a new character just to see how that goes, but we'll see how that happens. Now this weekend, Brian and I are going to stream on, my hope is Friday. That's the day I asked, I sent Brian a message asking him Friday, and he said he needs to look into it. And I can on Saturday, so it definitely won't be on Saturday, but worst case scenario, it might be Sunday. But I'm shooting for Friday, and my hope is that we can get right into the fishing system and working out all this stuff, and we're probably going to rehash everything I said here and just chat about it and see the general feel that people are having about the fishing system. And I know Brian hasn't touched anything since the last stream, so I'm going to be probably teaching him about the fishing system and see how he likes it. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I hope you guys are enjoying the fishing system. I know I enjoyed it. I'm definitely going home and trying it out again, like just messing around with it a little bit more. I want to make myself a tackle box. I want to mess around with different baits. So I heard cheese is a thing, and I have a ton of cheese in my food storage bin. So I'm going to test that out and see what happens there. Yeah, I'll let you guys know how it goes. And I really hope that we have the devs' ear on this, which I know we do. In the forum, there's a forum post about the fishing skill, and I'm sure the devs are scouring that just to try to see if they can address anything or take that feedback and figure out what to do about it. But yeah, those are my opinions. I really feel like the number one thing that needs to change is that 3-minute timer. If you can bring that down to about 30 seconds, it would make the whole thing way more engaging and way more motivating to keep going. But other than that, I love the system. I love its complexity. I love the fact that it gives me something to do and something to work towards. So yeah, those are my thoughts about that. One more suggestion. I think what would also make it more engaging and worthwhile is to add animal parts to fish. So when I fillet the fish, or quote-unquote butcher, or whatever it is, you get some animal bits, like eyes and things like that. You can also add fish oil as a type of oil to the game, so you can harvest fish oil. I think that if you add more resources that come along with fish, so sort of to put them on par with hunting, right? When I go out and hunt, I don't just do that for the meat. I'm doing that for all these extra resources, leather and whatever else there is, all the animal bits and stuff. So if you give that kind of incentive to fishing, then I think that you're going to find a lot more people using that system in order to collect resources as opposed to just the meat. So yeah, that's another suggestion that I think will help motivate people to work on their fishing skill. So anyway, I'm going to end the video here. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you tune into our next stream, which should happen on Friday or Sunday or sometime when we're available to stream. And until next time, I hope you guys enjoy, and yeah, keep on worming. See you guys.